in English. And then I started working for environmental and sustainable agriculture nonprofits doing marketing. And then I did that. I worked at the Nature Conservancy for a couple years. Then I worked on some vegetable farms. I worked on a farm in Iowa, I worked on a farm in California, and I worked on a farm in New York. And then kind of by a series of events, I ended up back in Iowa living with my parents. And I started working for the Iowa Food Cooperative, which is an online food hub. It's all online ordering. So I was managing their email, Facebook page, all of the things that I'd been doing at nonprofits before, and really learned a lot about local food promotion, started doing these presentations for groups of farmers and other people doing work in food businesses, just talking about how to create social media marketing plans that are not insane and you can actually keep up with them or try to better than you have in the past. Now I work for the Women Food and Agriculture Network, and so we're a nonprofit that was founded in Iowa about 20 years ago, and my job there is managing the communications for our 4 program areas, and then also teaching workshops for women who want to run for office or lead advocacy campaigns. So I teach a lot about storytelling, how to tell your story effectively, figuring out what your story actually is, which sometimes it can be a really big struggle, actually knowing what aspects of our story are interesting to tell. So I've worked in the sales side of things. I've done nonprofit storytelling most of my life, and then I've done a lot with for-profit food businesses too. And I live in Des Moines. I don't actively farm right now, and if I were going to farm, I'm really interested in medicinal herbs, and so that's kind of what I would want to do if I were farming right now. Some quick statistics about online marketing. So 80% of people do research on a company before purchasing from them, which I think everybody in this room knows. We've all wanted to make a purchase and gone to Amazon or Google search trying to figure out what it is that, just a little bit more information about the product. And we'll talk about why that's important a little bit more later, but basically the idea is that if we're trying to sell products, we want people to be able to find information about what we're selling online because they're probably going to do research. 66% of business owners say that finding new customers is a top priority for them, but 18% admit that they don't track any returns on their marketing. So you can't really effectively market if you're not really paying attention to how effective what you're doing is. And we'll talk about how you can use digital marketing to help you track data and use statistics to figure out what's working and what's not working. So this is a pretty basic online marketing concept. Let's say that we have 20,000 people visiting our website or our Facebook page, or 200 people visiting our website or Facebook page. Of those, maybe a fourth of the people we're actually going to be able to convert to like our Facebook page, sign up for our email list, whatever it is that we're trying to get them to do. And then from that, we might have 1/5 of those people who will actually retain as customers. So all along here, there's tipping points. So the tipping points up here might be that they're just not your target audience. They're never going to be your customer. But some of these people down here might be your customer still if there was one little kind of thing different about your business. So you can use online marketing to kind of figure out what those tipping points are so that then we can retain more of these people down the line. So why is having an online presence important? It helps other people find you and it helps other people promote your business, which is really important if you're a small business owner because we all have limited amounts of time. So if we can create things that our customers can do some of the heavy lifting for us, then that's going to save us time in the long run actively trying to market our business. So online marketing tools help you tell a story. They help potential customers know who you are and what you stand for, and they also let people know that your business is still active. So a really common problem for farms is that I might do a Google search and I might be able to find a phone number, but not a website, or I see that they were selling at a market a year ago, but I don't see where they're selling this year. Or maybe I've seen them at like this grocery store one time, but I haven't seen them since then. And I don't necessarily know how I can get their products. So that's a really key aspect of what we're going to talk about today, is just like, if somebody wants to find out about your business or about a product that you're selling in the area, can they find you? All right, so I'm gonna stop here for a minute and I want to get a sense of people. You kind of, in the introductions, shared where you're selling, but so who's selling online right now? Is anybody? You're selling online, okay. And then who's selling in an on-farm retail market? Nobody. Who's selling in an off-farm retail market? Mostly everybody. Okay. How else are people selling? Direct to consumer?
Wholesale.
Wholesale?
Wholesale.
Restaurants. Okay. Okay, that's helpful. All right. So online behaviors, people spend at least 2 hours a day on the internet, probably a lot more than that. And we know that of the 2 hours that people spend on the internet, they spend about 25 minutes using search engines, social media, reading articles, and shopping. They spend about 16 minutes, I would guess it's probably closer to 30 minutes now, watching videos. And then 65, actually I think that number is higher now, primarily access internet from a mobile device. So this is all just to say that whatever you're doing, you really want to make sure what you're doing is mobile friendly, because more and more and more, that's the way that we're going to be moving towards. A lot of people just don't even have a computer anymore. And then this is, so we've got 2 hours, we've got about a fourth of that time using social media and reading articles and shopping. So obviously, when we get online, we're bombarded with like tons and tons and tons of messages, even more now than we really ever have been in the past. And it's getting harder and harder to get your content up at the top of the newsfeed without having to pay for online advertising. And so it's just the unfortunate reality. You're competing with a lot of things. And so that's why we want to make sure that like what we're doing effectively, and really, we'll talk about this kind of throughout the day, this idea that you want to make something that you can use and test one time, and then continue to use that thing that you spent some time making once, again and again and again, to save your time over the long run. And then today we're going to talk about just generally your brand identity is going to be kind of the first part of it. The 3 different kinds of online marketing, which are search engine marketing, content marketing, and social media marketing. And then we'll talk about audience and then kind of what makes your business unique. So this is going to be some like question and answer sort of work time. I'm going to ask you some different questions, and then I'm going to encourage you to either start a document on your computer, or if you prefer to write, you can write in your notebook. Some of you might have given a lot of thought to this already, and some of you might not have given a lot of thought to this. So I would say if you already have a really good understanding of who your different audiences are, maybe in this moment it would be a good idea to spend some time thinking about a target audience that maybe you're not reaching, and think about the questions in regards to them. So I always start with the branding conversation talking about audience, because if you don't know who you're talking to, it's really difficult to know how to talk to them well. And the way that we're going to talk to different audiences is going to vary based on who they are. So the way that I might talk to this like grandmother who is really into cooking big meals for her family, what she wants from my business isn't necessarily going to be the same as what this woman, who is maybe a mom who's like working from home and taking care of her kid, is going to need. And that's also going to be different from like maybe what these 3 scruffy guys are going to want, which they're farmers in Iowa. Maybe some of you know them. And so, yeah, so we'll talk about audience here. So on your paper, I would want you to think of 3 different audiences that you're trying to market with your business. And the first thing I would think about is, I like to come up with names for them. So this one I often call the hippie grandma. And then this one might be like crunchy granola mom or something like that. So I like to kind of just like create these characters in my mind of who these people are. So if you could just think of, 3 different audiences. You don't have to come up with a cute name if you don't want to, but I encourage it. It makes the process more fun. And then under each of the names, I want you to just list out some things about those people. So what kinds of magazines do you think that they read? What, maybe like even what kind of music do you think they listen to? What kind of car do they drive? What is, you want to be kind of thinking about what they might want to buy from your business, but we're not really thinking just about the products necessarily specifically in this moment. I want you to really dig into the character of this person. And you might have like somebody who who is like really representative of that audience in your mind. So like you might have somebody who you frequently sell to, or you might have like a wholesaler that you work with that is very particular about the way that they want things, and that might be one of your audiences. But yeah, just listing off, I'm gonna make kind of a list over here of just things to get you thinking about. And I'm gonna give you about 5 minutes to think about this. How they drive, how much money they make, who are they feeding? Where do they buy most of their groceries right now? What do they care about in terms of food, quality, cuts, taste, artisan, or not? What else? Kids not, how old are they? What's their education level? Okay, and then in the last minute here, if you're still working on your audience, that's fine, but maybe in the last minute, think about what is each individual audience's motivation for like wanting to buy your product. This is really key for a lot of local food businesses because people are often motivated by some moral desire to do something different or better. All right, we're gonna go ahead and wrap the audience conversation up, and then we'll have more work time later. So you can continue working on this throughout the course of the day, and you might get more ideas as the day goes on too. So does somebody have an audience that they wrote down, like especially if you came up with a name for it? I want to hear the name. Or even if you didn't. Does anyone have an audience that they want to share? Yeah.
So we have the green mom.
Okay, yep.
She normally is reading articles on like health benefits or the disadvantages of certain types of food. She's cleaning with all natural products. She's probably pretty money conscious. She's shopping at places like Aldi because they offer natural products at a low price. She might have kids with dietary restrictions or like gluten, celiac disease. She's buying in bulk a lot of the times to save money, and she would be purchasing our grass-fed.
Yeah. That's great. That's a really good audience, and I'm sure a lot of you probably have that audience. It's probably one of the top 3 audiences that kind of local food producers usually sell to. And I think that your assessment that they shop at Aldi because they have the natural products is spot on. And the idea that of being money conscious. So that's something that people kind of sometimes do get a little confused about. I think sometimes it's like, well, she might drive like a brand new Prius or something like that, but she's really trying to like make ends meet on the food budget with getting like the best that she can for her family. So buying, yeah, like half a cow or something like that is often what that family will end up doing. Cool. All right. So the next thing is this idea of you want your customers to feel at home in your brand. So what do I mean by that? I mean, you want to build something that's consistent, and it can be very simple. So when I worked at the Iowa Food Cooperative, I came on staff and there was kind of a lot of different fonts being used, different shades of green and orange being used. And so when I came on, I'm not an amazing graphic designer at all. That's not my skill set. But all I saw was there's this big orange circle here. And so then I basically just made that the consistent image that would be through everything. And so you kind of want to find something like that for your brand. So you might have a logo already, but there might be an aspect of your logo, or there might be a specific kind of image that you use frequently. Obviously, like Target. We all know Target because you see the dot, the red Target dot, and you know that you're in Target. And everything is red when you get into the store, red and white. And so you know there's a sense of trust that's being created because of consistency. And so that's what we're talking about. It can be really easy to kind of like come up with a brand and come up with a logo and then start to use it and then decide, I don't really like the way that that looks, and then change it, and then change it again, and then change it again, and then customers actually will perceive that as that you are not trustworthy. So creating the consistent brand is really important, just so that when people see something from you, they know exactly who they're talking to, what they're getting, and who they're getting it from. And then that builds name recognition over time. You might not build Target name recognition, but you might build name recognition for your business and the community that you're trying to serve. And brands don't have to be fancy. This is like a very basic font, basic colors, but there's just this sense of consistency over the course of time. And a consistent brand will make lackluster images look better. So it's just the consistency and clean image that makes things look clean and nice and creates this image that you are worth buying from. So now we're basically going to do the same thing. So for about the next 5 minutes, I want you to think about what are the elements of your brand that you already have. So you have a logo. You have a consistent font that you're using. You have 2 to 3 colors. Can you tell me what the hexadecimal or RGB or CMYK codes for those colors are? If you don't know what I'm talking about, the answer is probably no. You have images. So do you have a set of 5 to 10 images you're already using? If you don't, what would you want to use?
In terms of images, you don't mean off of your logo, you mean something complementary to the logo?
Yeah, I mean like pictures of your farm, pictures of you, pictures of who you're farming with, pictures of your products. So what would be, 5 to 10 images that you would want. And then, are you taking these pictures if you don't have them, or are you going to hire somebody to do it for you? We'll talk about that too. What else? Do you have so your farm name, obviously as part of your brand. Do you have a farm tagline or mission statement? And then, what makes your farm different from other farms? Are you first-gen farmer? Are you fifth-gen farmer? Are you young? Are you a woman? all of these different things. Have you been in your community for a really long time? You've been doing this for like 30 years, and in addition to farming, maybe you're doing other things in your community that are sort of tangentially related to your farm. What do people who already buy from you like about you? What are the compliments that you get? And then one other thing I want you to think about is, what marketing skills do I have? And what skills do I have on my farm that make me like really good at what I do? So how did I go to school for this? Did I grow up on the farm doing this since I was a kid? Write that down. And then what are some skills that I want? I don't know how to use Instagram. I don't know what a hashtag is. I don't know what a hexadecimal code is. And we'll do this for about 5 minutes, answer these questions. Just to wrap up our thoughts on this for right now, and in that minute, answer the question, what is one word that I want people to walk away when they see anything that is associated with my brand? What is one word I want them to think about? All right, so does anybody have either a word that they thought of or an element of their brand that they feel like really strongly about, that was like really representative of their brand that they want to share with everybody? Yeah.
I thought of quality.
Quality, definitely, yeah. And that, in response to what she said earlier, when you're trying to market to an audience that's maybe like buying at Aldi because they have like grass-fed organic beef in their thing, but what you have might be a much higher quality. So how do you see quality coming out in your brand? Do you have any ideas of like how you want to communicate that what you have is a quality product?
I mean, I guess like we try to educate the consumer, but anytime like we've had people come buy our products at like especially farmers market, like in Ames, like that's something they come back and they tell us like it's like a much better quality product than like what they've like purchased before at like somewhere else. Like let's say what they've purchased before at other grocery stores. So I think that's something like that just resonates and that we want to come out and across from that standpoint.
Yeah, so you've got customers that are consistently buying your product because they find it to be better. Yeah, definitely. And so we'll continue to talk about this, but are you working with your consumers at all to use that to your advantage? Like, have you collected testimonials from your customers or anything
I have
like that?
collected them. We haven't gotten them up on our website. We do have a couple on Facebook that have like gone on themselves and like given reviews, but I haven't gotten them up on our website yet.
Yeah, okay. And that's a really good thing to do, is to ask your customers to review your product on your Facebook page too. And we'll talk about shortly, we're going to talk about search marketing, but that's one of the things that when people Google search your business, the reviews from Facebook is one of the first things that comes up. So even getting, like 2 to 5 of those can be really helpful when people are first finding out about you. All right, so the next thing I want to talk about is voice. So voice can be hard, especially if it's a family business, it can be really hard because there might be multiple people who have voices in that business, and somebody's voice might be stronger than somebody else's voice. So I just have some examples of people who we kind of have strong voices. So Neil Young has like a very raspy voice. His lyrics are kind of on a similar thematic. He has similar themes throughout his songs. Daria is a character from a cartoon show who has like a very monotone voice and is very cynical about everything, and she always kind of like wears the same thing. She has a very strong brand. cartoon characters often do. Jerry Seinfeld has like a very particular kind of humor. Bernie Sanders obviously is like senator from Vermont, has like a very strong accent. Frida Kahlo is an artist who we might not necessarily think about as her talking, we might not be able to hear it, but I put her up here just because voice we think about as words and what we're saying, but voice is also images and the way that we are communicating through pictures. And on social media, we might have 10 words. You can have a really strong voice in 10 words. You don't necessarily need a whole paragraph, but voice is about what kinds of words we typically use, the cadence of how we talk, and then how other people perceive our voice when they hear it. So with voice, I would encourage you to think about questions like, what is the voice of my brand, and really separating it from your own personal voice. So like what might be aspects of your voice that you want to actually bring into your brand, and maybe what are some things that you don't necessarily want to. So often what I find with producers is that they are either in one of two places. They really like working directly with consumers and they really enjoy that sales aspect of things, or they really, really hate it. And often if they don't like it, it's because they have this idea that they, as the producer, are kind of like selling themselves, and that feels very uncomfortable to them. And so there's a difference between me as Ash and the way that I use my voice, like when I talk to Marty in like a personal setting, and then me as Ash, the professional person, how I'm standing here talking to all of you right now. There's similarities between those two people. Obviously, they're both me, but when I talk to Marty, I am not going to probably be like doing this with my hands a lot. This is like, I'm trying to be more like poised kind of over here. There's with voice, you know, over here, let's say that maybe I'm more nervous about doing my sales and my voice might crack a little bit more. How can I, like what kind of characteristics do I need to find in myself so that when I'm over here in this setting, I feel more confident in using my voice? So I would now encourage you to think about like, what is your personal voice? So when like you're talking to your family, like what is kind of the voice that you're using in that setting? What are some of maybe the like colloquial terms that you're frequently using? What's like your tone of voice? Are you soft-spoken? Are you loud? How in your family dynamics are you more often the one talking, or are you more often the one that's on the side of the room? So think about that. How do you use voice? How do you use your voice in like a family setting? And then think about in a business setting, how is that different? If it is, are you serious? Are you funny? Are you young? Do you feel when you talk that you're respected or not? And why? Do people ever make comments on your writing style or your speaking, how you speak? And what do they say? How does that make you feel? And what would you change if you could? And then also, how is your voice different from the audience that you're working with? So maybe you're from a small town and you're primarily marketing to people who live in urban communities, how is the way that they talk different from the way that you talk? So take a few minutes to think about that. And think about, like, if you're currently posting on Facebook, do you think about this when you're posting? Do you have like a consistent kind of way that you're writing your posts? Or no, definitely not. And like, are you using text when you're writing posts on Facebook? And then maybe also think about like, how do you feel most comfortable like sharing your voice? So for some people, they're very comfortable writing, but they're not comfortable being up in front of a room talking. Or they're comfortable in person, but they're not comfortable on the phone. So where do you feel most comfortable using your voice? If you're a texter and you use emojis, something you could think about is what are like 5 emojis that I use a lot when texting, or what would be like emojis that I would use to talk about my business. I unfortunately frequently use the eye roll emoji. That's like a big part of my voice. Alright, so now this is where the plan, we're going to start kind of actually thinking more about what we're going to do when we leave the room. Content. So content is really hard because you have to make a lot of it. Basically everyone who owns a business or manages a nonprofit now is expected to be like a content powerhouse. Like we're all supposed to kind of be graphic designers, writers, videographers, photographers. We're just like basically supposed to do everything. And in addition to actually like running our business. And so with content, what I want people to think about is, first of all, is what are you currently doing? So just like write it down on your paper. I know we've already kind of talked about it, but so am I blogging, or was I blogging? Do I like to write? Do I hate to write? Do I like to take pictures? Am I always walking around the farm taking pictures on my phone? Do I like talking to people more? Like, am I more about, I like to really have a lot of direct interaction with my consumers, and I don't really like the internet because it feels sort of impersonal to me. Am I interested in doing video? Am I comfortable being in front of the camera? Or am I not comfortable being in front of the camera? Do I want my content to really showcase like me and my family, the people that I'm farming with? Or do I want the pictures to more like showcase the land or the product or the logo? You know, what is the focus of the images that I'm trying to create? Do you like email? And do you want to have emails that are more text focused? That's more natural for you, or more image focused? You're more of a photographer kind of person. And then, do I like graphic design? Do I like making posters? Do I like doing that? And also think about, so that's kind of like thinking about what do I like to do and like what's natural for me. And then also, and we're gonna spend a fair amount of time on this. So that's kind of one part of it, because in order to be consistent with your marketing, you're gonna have to kind of like parts of it. Because if you don't really enjoy any of it, then that's just gonna be one of the things that's gonna continue to go to the bottom of the list. So what is the thing that like you really like the most and are most comfortable with? And then think about what do you want to get kind of from your audience. So are there questions that like I don't know the answers to about my customers? And like what would they be? Are there things that, oh thank you. Are there things that I really want to bring into my brand in terms of education? So like what are some things that people might not know about? The kind of business that I run, where I live, my family, who we are. So what are the things that like you really want to educate your customers about or your potential customers about? I would also encourage you to think about what happens every month. In January, what's happening on your farm? In July, what's happening on your farm? There's probably going to be like some variations, but you probably got some pretty consistent things that are happening in January, February, March that are different. So what are those things? They might seem like really boring and stupid to you, but to somebody who isn't doing what you're doing, they might be very interesting. So I would encourage you to write down every month and then just write like one thing that's happening that month. And then you could also think about like what's happening in the community that you're selling in during that time too. Like as the farmers market started, farmers markets ended. Is there a winter market that's happening on that you're going to be selling at? So add that to your list too. What else in terms of content? So yeah, images, and then am I going to be more focused on that, or am I going to be more focused on creating graphics? If I'm creating graphics, like how am I going to be using that on Facebook to maybe like ask my customers questions? And we'll talk about like how you can do that and programs you can use to kind of create graphic memes. You can also think about what kinds of content are you drawn to when you're on social media. So for me, I love reading horoscopes. I'm like obsessed. It's bad. And so for me, one of the things I really like about reading horoscopes is that like they're short, they're fun, they're informative. So then I might take that idea and knowing that like other women who are part of Women, Food, and Agriculture Network are also probably like nerdily obsessed with horoscopes. I might try to find a way to take something like that and then turn it into something that I would use to promote Women, Food, and Agriculture Network. So it could be like little forecasts on, this is actually really interesting and now I kind of want to do it. I might think of like ways that I could write just like short monthly forecasts about like what we're expecting to see from women in food and agriculture, or like women running for office that month. And I might try to do this on Instagram because I love reading horoscopes on Instagram. That's the main way that I read them. Another thing is like, so I use Instagram a lot, and I'm going to talk a lot about Instagram kind of as the day goes on. I love Instagram for my personal use. It's my favorite social media platform. And then I started an Instagram for Women, Food, and Agriculture Network, and I post somewhat regularly, but the thing that I use is the story feature because I love to read other people's stories. And if you don't know what a story is, it's just a series of temporary images that will pop up for 24 hours. And so like yesterday I was in Decorah and I was adding images to my story. There was like a mural, and so then I thought, oh, this is really cool, you know, I want to share this with my friends back home. So I'm taking a video of that. We went and had like some beers at Pulpit Rock, so I'm like taking pictures of that and adding it to my story, and I get a lot of like joy out of this. So then with Women, Food, and Agriculture Network, this is a way for me to kind of do something that I already really enjoy doing, and I know that other people really like to look at, and it makes the brand seem like a little bit more personal. So think about like what is it that like you're really drawn to? Maybe you hate Instagram and you're more likely to like click on a news article or something like that. And like, why are you drawn to that kind of content? And then, yeah, that's another thing over here. So in terms of content, Instagram, Facebook, you're not going to do the same thing on every platform. I doubt anyone in here is really active on Twitter, but maybe some of you are. You're not going to necessarily use the same content across every platform, but you can take a blog post and you might have an image in that blog post that you're going to use on Instagram, and then you're going to be like linking out to it. So what are the platforms that like you're most comfortable with? What do you like to do the most? How do you see that kind of fitting into these different platforms if you do it all? And then what kinds of content are you drawn to? And then really like what's happening on your farm every month is a key part of this developing this guide that we're gonna make. So go ahead and start thinking about that. We're gonna take I'm gonna give you 5 minutes, then we're gonna talk a little bit more about content, then we're gonna have a little bit more work time, and then we're gonna talk a little bit more about some of these other concepts. All right, so we're gonna continue working on this, but one other thing I want you to think about is what is content that like I am currently receiving from other people, and what is content that I could potentially receive from other people. So what do I mean by that? I mean, so when I worked at the Iowa Food Cooperative, one of the things that we would do was ask for customers to share what they were making with the food that they were purchasing from us, recipes, stories, and pictures. And so one of the ways that we did this was on Instagram. And we created a hashtag that we would encourage our customers to use when they tagged photos, and then I would basically ask our customers if I could use their pictures. And even like really mediocre pictures, sometimes it's better to have those. And so some of the things that you might be getting is like customers coming up to you and giving you testimonials. And that might be something that like you're gonna now think, I wanna add that into my content flow. So maybe every time a customer is gonna give me a testimonial, I'm gonna have a process that I'm gonna go through where I'm gonna ask them like, hey, do you mind if we like write that down or something like that? Where is the content coming into me and how could I use it? Do you have customers that like send you pictures, or is there a way that you could get pictures from customers? Are there stories? Do you have times when people are coming to your farm and like that's gonna be a really good opportunity for you to collect content that you're gonna use over the course of the year? So we've kind of been talking about like what do I like to do and what are the content channels that I'm using, but now I want you to kind of switch your focus to like how am I receiving some content that isn't coming from my brain, that's coming into me from somebody that I'm selling to. And part of that content flow might also be like, sometimes people sell into a co-op, and that co-op might have content that then like you're gonna use in your own marketing. Or you read the morning ag report on Politico every day, or you read you read On Pasture, and they talk about rotational grazing, and you're getting content for yourself, but you might not necessarily think of it as relevant to your customers, but it might be something that you could use as content in your calendar. So now we're kind of thinking about what is content that's coming into me that I'm not creating, but I could use to add in. So think about that for a couple minutes. So then also in terms of content, we're gonna do this for the next like 3 minutes, and then I think I have just some general we'll talk a little bit generally about different kinds of online marketing and what the terms mean. And then we'll start working on like an actual kind of communications plan. So what are some like messages that you like consistently are wanting to communicate as kind of part of this? So at Iowa Food Cooperative, one of the big things every year was Thanksgiving. And so we were consistently like wanting to communicate, these are some reasons why you might want to buy a locally raised turkey rather than like a butterball turkey. And this is something that like I made once and then I used it every year that I was there. When I worked with Prudent Terra, they're an agroforestry consulting company. They had these plans that they would put together for people, but like there were basic kind of parts of the plan that would remain consistent over everything. So are there things that like you do an email newsletter every month, and like what are the aspects of that email newsletter that are like, you might have a story, you might have a featured product, and you might have a customer like testimonial or something. There might be like 3 parts of that email newsletter that you're gonna do every month. I've done a lot of volunteer marketing work for an environmental group in Des Moines called Urban Ambassadors. And so one of the things that we would always do was share on social media a graphic like this, which then was a way for us to collect content, and then we would use that content to create a blog post from it. And then we would use the same graphic in that blog post. So in that way, we're like getting our constituents to do some of the heavy lifting for us, because I'm not coming up with 10 ways to celebrate a sustainable holiday. I'm just using the quotes from them. So kind of the last thing about content is just what are things that you're gonna be consistently communicating about. You might look at like the months that you wrote down and what are the messages, and then like what might be one of the best tools to communicate that. So is it an infographic? Is it a blog post? Is it like something that's for print that like you're gonna have at a market stand? And then, so how are you going to be collecting the content that you need to communicate that message? And then like what would be the end product? I'm trying to think of like what a good example of this would be for some of your businesses, but
Recipes.
Recipes is a big one. Recipes, but also just like, well, does anybody have something that they're thinking of in their mind that like is something that consistently happens every year that they really want their customers to know about?
Do a cattle drive every year.
You do a cattle drive every year. Okay, so tell me a little bit about that.
We have a pasture about 6 or 7 miles away from our home.
Okay.
Pasture, and use quarter horses to drive our herd from that pasture to our home place.
Okay, all
Which
right.
is something uncommon that you don't see very often in rural Iowa.
Definitely, yeah, cool. So this is something that happens every year.
Mhm.
All right, and so this is something that like people would not know necessarily what you're talking about. So there's just like that initial piece, and that's not gonna change. Your explanation isn't gonna change. So that's like one piece of content that you might create. And then there might be like images might be an aspect of that, where like maybe one year you're gonna hire your friend that has a DSLR camera to come and take some pictures for you, and then you're gonna use those over and over again. You might write a blog post like this year that kind of like explains this process, and you have some pictures from it, and you might have like stories. Have you been doing this since you were young? Or yeah, okay. So you might have stories that you're gonna think about now that like you've had in these experiences, and then you could create a whole set of content around that. Then you could use every year. Like you might tweak it a little bit here and there, but so this like kind of what I'm getting at here is like, what is one big content piece that like you could put a lot of effort into that you're gonna use every year from now on? And because once you get that, this year, that might be one of the biggest things that you do for marketing. And you might update your Facebook page and things like that, but that's gonna be like a big, heavy content piece. Then next year, in the winter when you're creating some more content. Maybe you're gonna have that time open up, you're not gonna be doing that anymore, so then you can create another larger content piece. And then over time, as you're building your business, you're gonna build that content like toolkit up. And this is gonna save you time, this is going to help create anchor points so that you don't get lost in the marketing of your business, because it can be really easy to be like, okay, I did this big push and now I am out in the field and I'm working and I don't have time to do this marketing anymore, and it just completely drops off. But if you have, and that's gonna happen, like that happens to me. But if you have those anchor points that you know, okay, I kind of fell off, but this other big thing is gonna come up now and I'm gonna get back on track. So think about like, what is one of that big anchor point thing that you could make?
So I want to ask a question about this cattle drive that they're going to expand, and use again and again, but not to be redundant, right? So you're asking them to find all the little different angles to tell that story, and it's going to take you some thinking, because you might look at it like this, but then you're going to think, well, what about this and this, right? You're building all those.
Yeah, definitely. And so like, you might do, like let's say that you do Instagram and you're gonna do an Instagram story, and you might save all of that content, and you might not use that same content next year because you're gonna be like creating a new story, but you'll know like, okay, at this point we had like this part of the story, but then we didn't really explain what was going on, so now next year we want to do that. And then I think like collecting like small interesting stories is a really key part of your content. And so I think we all know that farms have the ability to create a lot of content. Like a sunset, people will like look at a picture of a sunset and they'll just go crazy over it, and you might like see it every day and just like not really think it's that big of a deal. Or even like your livestock, you might just be like, all right, there they are, and I don't know, maybe you have like strong relationships with them or not. But other people might look at that and think that it's very unique, interesting. If you raise a special breed, if you're raising heritage breed, or if you're doing a practice that's different, this is stuff that people just like generally don't know about. And so building a content piece around that is really based in like stories that you have, like those stories are going to be evergreen. They're not going to get old. People might see them over and over again. If you're like sharing a story in January and you're sharing the same story in July, very few people are going to notice that it's the same thing, even though you know. So we're all just like talking about storytelling here. So like creating an anchor kind of bigger marketing piece that has some maybe smaller stories in it. So like you two might have some stories that you've had like from your childhood and then maybe now, and you might come up with like, these are 10 little different stories. So we're talking about the cattle drive, and then we might share on Instagram and Facebook like single images with little stories that then we're gonna be like in the comments linking to like this blog post that we wrote about it. So you've got it's one piece of content, but it's really gonna be like 20 pieces of content that you're creating and sharing over a course of time. All right.
When you shared like that infographic year after year, like you didn't ever change it, you just kept the same one, or did you change it?
This one about the turkey, I used that the same year after year, but I also created additional pieces of content. So like part of that was like, this is why you should buy a local turkey, and then there would be producer profiles about people who were raising turkeys, and so those producers might not be the same every year, and using images, but like this would be an anchor point. And then like I had, I think, a blog post that kind of went more in depth on each of these points, and I used that every year. And I mean, I would maybe after 3 to 5 years decide like, yeah, I'm gonna change this out. But I really think for something like that, but like very few people, we consume so much content online, like really people are not gonna notice. at Women Food and Agriculture Network, I'll share a post and I'll reshare the same post 10 days later. And some of the same people will see it, but like they might have seen the same post on another Facebook page, you know? It's like people are used to seeing the same content over and over again.
And the changing algorithms.
Exactly.
You don't even know if they saw it.
Exactly, and like you might have 20 people that are gonna see something, so.
Because I was thinking like for us, like Prime, whenever 10 millions for like the holidays or something,
Yeah.
like you could use something similar.
Exactly,
to
yeah.
that, or like that's, you know, something along the same lines.
Yeah, and that's part of, so we're thinking about like kind of what's happening every month, maybe like what is the content, so I'm talking about, so the cattle drive is kind of like a bigger example, but you can also take it down and then say, okay, in January this is happening. I'm gonna create one content piece around this thing that's happening in January, and I'm gonna do that this year. Next year, I'm gonna take that content piece and I'm gonna add something to it. So this year, maybe I'm gonna make some graphics that they're talking about like why you should buy this cut of meat, or like why it's good for the holidays, something to consider. And then maybe next year I want to get a story from a family that I sold to about how they used it in their holiday preparations. Or maybe I'm gonna do it myself and I'm gonna take pictures of it. But it's like baby steps, you know, one step at a time. It's really easy to get overwhelmed. Be like, I gotta make a blog post, I gotta make an Instagram, I gotta like, I gotta do Facebook Live, I gotta do everything, and I gotta do it now. And so if we can just think of one thing that we're gonna do, that's gonna like make it more approachable. And then next year we're just gonna add a little bit to that piece, because what's happening every year is probably not gonna change that much. Like we might change, our business might grow, our business might, you know, add a new market or something like that, but the basic of like what's happening every month is gonna stay roughly similar. So yeah, if you can't think of something that's like a bigger thing, you might just want to pick one of your months and think about what the content piece is. Okay, I'm gonna talk a little bit about search marketing and the whole Facebook page, website situation. And then what we're going to do, I think I'm gonna try to bring up the my content calendar to show you guys. And then we're gonna have a little less than an hour for you to continue like fleshing out this like kind of monthly content plan in a way that's gonna make sense to you. So the idea of search marketing is essentially when somebody goes online to find out about you, what do they find? So what Google search engine is really looking for, or Facebook also has as like a search function, is making sure that you're authentic. So do you have a phone number? Do you have an address? Do you have up-to-date, accurate information? Have you like put something up on your website in the last year? So you have a name, you exist, you're real. Are you creating content? One of the things that the algorithms looks for is, do you have a mix of content that you created yourself and then external content? So that's like linking out to other pages, yeah, basically that's kind of one of the big things. How many external links do you have going off of your website? So they're looking for a mix of like stuff that you created yourself and then that you're reaching out to other people. So one of the things that you'll see on Facebook is like if you're just sharing links to your website or pictures of your business, but you're never tagging like another business or another Facebook page, your posts aren't going to do as well as if you're actually interacting with other Facebook pages. And then activity. So are you actively posting to your website? Are you actively posting to your Facebook page? And are people interacting and sharing with the content that you're producing? So one of the big things on Facebook right now is comments and live stream videos. So Facebook really is looking for, are people commenting on your posts? And one of the ways that you can get people to comment on your post is to ask them. So, and there's no shame in doing it. So if you have a group of friends or family, it's totally okay to say, hey, I'm trying to build my Facebook page's presence. Would you mind, I just posted this question, or questions are good. So I just posted this question about maybe like, what are you excited to like cook this weekend? We'll just use that example. And then sending a Facebook message to maybe, 5 people who you know are very supportive of you and just saying, hey, do you mind going and commenting on this to help me kind of build my business? And then the other thing is live stream video on Facebook and Instagram is like the height of what will get like it'll get the most views. And that's because Facebook sees it as urgent content, whereas like just sharing something to your Facebook page will be seen as less urgent content. And if people aren't interacting with it, then I think we all know like 15 people will see it and you'll feel like you wasted your time. So that's kind of what we're like running up against in online marketing right now is you want to make content that like you can make and like you feel comfortable making, but in a way we're all sort of being forced to now do live video because that's really what they want us to be doing. But I'm kind of getting off on a tangent here. But basically what I want you to get from this slide is that you should Google search your business name and see what comes up. So this is one example. So when I did a Google search for Iowa Food Cooperative, this is what comes up. So the website, Facebook page, a Des Moines Register article about us. We've got hours, which are actually sort of like not accurate, and you can send into Google if things are inaccurate. I will tell you, sometimes it takes a really long time to get it fixed, and sometimes it doesn't get fixed, and sometimes it's a frustrating situation. But you want to at least know kind of what people are coming up with, because then you can create content on your website that is going to be kind of like answering questions that people might have when they're looking for you. So you can see this is like on our website, this was what we put in like our meta description of the website, because that's what we wanted people to see when it first popped up. But then we also had a slideshow that had some like frequently asked questions, so that like, okay, people found Iowa Food Cooperative, they got to our website, now they might still have some questions. Here's the answers to those questions right here. So like, what are people looking for about your business, and like, is there a way to easily find questions that they might have? So I found your business, how do I buy from you? Is that an easy transition for people to make when they Google search you? And if it's not, like, how are we gonna address that? So that's if people know the name of your business, but potential customers probably don't know the name of your business. So what are they gonna look for? They might look for vegetable farm near Des Moines, or they might look for grass-fed beef, northern Iowa. And so this is kind of getting into keyword terms. So one of the things that you want to think about are, if I don't know anything about my business, what are some words that I might use, and what are words that my audience specifically will use, which might not be the way that I would describe my business, but that might be how they see it. What are the words that they're going to use to try to find me? And then doing a Google search for that and seeing what comes up. Does your business come up? Does it not come up? You might not be able to get it to the top of the Google search engine, but if you've got those keywords consistently used on your website, it's more likely that you're going to come up in a search. And then another thing is like, oh, now I see that there's this list of you-pick farms, and there's the Iowa Fruit and Vegetable Growers Association. These are some of the things that are popping up. Is there any way that like I can get listed here too? So you want to think about what are some words that customers might use to find my business, and then add that into the way that you're writing your content. So that's going to then kind of shape your voice and the language that you're using. Okay, and then people always want to know, do I really need to have a website, or can I just have a Facebook page? I personally really encourage the website because Facebook's algorithms are always changing, and like we don't necessarily know what the future of Facebook is going to be. They could just take your content right down. So if you own your website, you're gonna get a higher Google search engine ranking for one thing. There's more upfront time and financial cost and education, but there's, I mean, not significantly more than Facebook, because I think that the return on investment for a website is gonna be higher than what it will be for a Facebook page. I'm kind of talking down on Facebook. I mean, obviously it's a really awesome tool, but I definitely understand why people get frustrated with it, because if you don't have a large following, it's really hard to get your content out to people. So a website is a way that you just have a little bit more control over, you just have more control over how the content's laid out. On a Facebook page, it's gonna be like, this is, you have the little description of your business, and then you might have your posts, but a website is like, you might put some time into it right now to kind of build those like frequently asked questions, and like, this is where you can buy our products, and this is a little bit about our business. And at least then you know that you have that. So whatever will happen with Facebook down the road, you've got that set up for you already. And you're not subject to the rules and algorithms of Facebook. So I would create content on a website to then share to Facebook. I think that people more and more are accepting of a business just having a Facebook page, but I certainly feel like when I look for a business and they have a website, I do take them a little bit more seriously and see them as a little bit more professional. And there's lots of ways to make a website now. These are some of the cheaper ones. I personally really like Squarespace and really encourage people to consider using Squarespace. You can do online sales using Squarespace and set up a store. That's something that you're interested in doing. You can have, your custom domain name, which is really important to not have the like myfarm.weebly.com URL. Like, it just kind of elevates the look of your business and makes you look a little bit more professional. People have varying expectations based on like how like the business that they're buying from. So obviously, like, and where they're from. So like, if you're marketing to an audience that's primarily coming from an urban community, they're probably going to have higher expectations of your marketing than like if you're mostly marketing to people in like a more rural part of Iowa. So you want to keep your audience in mind kind of when you're making those decisions too, but I do encourage the website. And then this is just a little bit about Facebook advertising and how to kind of break through the very frustrating algorithms. So less than 10% and like way less than 10%, like very few people actually will see your Facebook post, and they do this because they want you to buy advertising. So you can do what's called the boosted post from your Facebook page. And we've probably all seen this. You post something on Facebook and there's like a little blue button there that says boost post, and then you go in and you can make a decision. I want to pay per impression, so I'm going to pay every time somebody sees my post. That might be okay if you've got a good ad that's going to pop up and is like eye-catching, and you don't necessarily need someone to click on it. You just are trying to like build name recognition and brand awareness. A pay per impression might be fine. The other option is pay per click. So pay per click is going to be more expensive, but that's when you're paying only if somebody actually went to your website. And so depending on what your end goal is, pay per click might be a little bit more expensive, but might be more in line with what my end goal is. And pay per impression would be more like just building a brand recognition kind of. So that's what you kind of need to know about boosted posts. That said, I wouldn't recommend doing boosted posts. I would actually recommend doing ad buys through the Facebook Ads Manager and creating your ads that way if you're interested in doing Facebook ads. You can spend $50 on Facebook ads and see how effective they are, and then decide if that's something that you want to continue doing with your business or not. You can test ads and then stop them if you don't think that you're really getting a good return, and kind of go back to the drawing board. But with the Facebook ad manager, those get a higher priority over the boosted posts. So, and that's really what you're really wanting people to just like know about your business, not necessarily see all of the content that you're posting on Facebook. So the ads manager is a better way to do that. And then another way that you can kind of break through this issue of people don't see what I post is to create shareable content. So that's kind of what we've been talking about all day without talking about it. So in order to create shareable content, we need to know who our audience is and kind of what they're looking for from us. We need to know what our strengths are as a content creator. So if I'm not a good writer, then like blogging is probably not going to be what I'm going to make my quality content from. If I am really good at using Instagram, or I'm okay with being in front of a camera to do like a Facebook live stream, then that might be where my more quality content is going to come from. So rather than trying to do everything, what am I best at? And how can I deliver the content that my audience is wanting from me using what I'm good at? And then creating shareable content using photos and videos to your favor. So the algorithms are very graphic driven. So they want to have pictures. They want to have pictures that have people's faces on them, pictures of animals. That's going to get higher up in the Facebook, rankings. And then I know that, so I'm going to try to use an image that is going to be higher up in the algorithm. What do I want people to do when they see the image? Do I have a specific ask? Sharing is a really good ask, or commenting is a really good ask. You really want them to do one or the other or both. So when you're creating content, I would actually recommend putting more time into thinking about when I share this piece of content, what do I want my audience to do with it, than posting consistently every single day. I think that you're gonna get more return from it. Posting consistently is good, but if you're posting multiple times a day and you're not really getting anywhere with it, I would try this. Just to stop and think, what is a piece of content that I could make that my audience would likely share? And then you can ask people to share that for you too, to kind of like get the ball rolling. But this is a way of thinking about how can I get my customers to do some of the work for me. And so creating shareable content is one of the like easiest ways. So like, what does shareable content mean? Like, what are some things that people share when you see on Facebook? When you're on Facebook and you're like, oh, I want people to know about this, what makes you share something?
I was thinking cute pictures.
Cute pictures, yeah,
Baby
okay.
animals.
Yep, definitely, that's a big one. I would say, yeah, things that make people feel good, things that make people feel like they look smart when they share it, things that make people feel like they're going to be perceived a certain way when they share it. Really important for you guys to think about, because we talked about our audience earlier. What is one of their motivators to purchasing from us? So let's take our green mom, for example. She wants the best for her children. She might have kids that have dietary allergies. She wants to do the right thing. She's also being motivated by how people see her. So I said she drives a Prius. That's part of like her brand that she is kind of trying to put out about herself. How can you feed into the brand that she wants other people to see about her? So like, what is something that you can create that she's gonna wanna share? So like, you might create a graphic that you have on your Facebook page that talks about like a statistic about like why your farm's meat is better than like Aldi meat or something like that. And then she is going to now play this educator role to her friends, and you're just giving her the thing to do it with. And you've got your brand name on there. So then now she probably has similar people that she is reaching, and now she feels good. She's shared something that's like making her look good, and you're getting your brand name out there. So that's one of the way, in my experience, that's the easiest way to break through this issue that like nobody sees what I post. And so when you put more effort into creating the things that people are gonna share, then that's when you're gonna start to like see more people coming to your page. Okay, I think, yes, so questions, and then we're gonna have work time, and then while I'm up here asking, yes, and if you, in the work time now, I think we're gonna have lunch in about 25, 30 minutes. How do I make this go away? Escape. So yeah, during the work time, I would want you to Google your business and make notes about what appears and what you might want to change about that. But
do you think just hiring someone that has an understanding of SEO and how to tag your page and things like that to do that, or do you think that's something that Wix and Squarespace and all those places describe enough when you click in? Because like a lot of them, when you're building your website, they'll tell you, put these types of things there. Do you think that's enough, or do you think hiring someone to do that is worthwhile?
I think it depends on who you're gonna hire to do it for you. So I really like Squarespace, and I've had really good experiences with creating Squarespace pages and having my website show up in Google search results, like as the first thing, if people search for my business name. And then the thing about keywords is that you want to use them across all of the pages on your website. So it has to be in the content itself as well as in the like meta descriptions. Squarespace has different tools that you can I think hiring somebody to do it, if you have the ability to, it's probably not a bad idea, but I certainly don't think that it's an unreachable goal to do it yourself, because you're spending some time right now thinking about what those words are. You know, that's like, sometimes people make a website and they don't think about how people are actually going to find them, and they make the website, they've got their farm business name on there, but like we discussed, people might not know the name of your business. So yeah, I definitely think that you can do it yourself. I guess kind of what I'm skirting around here is that if you hire somebody to do it for you, they might not actually have that much more knowledge than you do right now. It really depends on who you're hiring. Other questions that people have? Internet Explorer.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
When you are like asking for content or using your customers' content for testimonials or for pictures or whatever, do you need to ask permission, or like how do you handle that
Definitely, I would ask permission.
for everything?
And I approach things in a fairly casual way. So like if somebody posted something to Instagram, and I was like, oh, I want to use this picture, I would literally just comment and say, hey, at so-and-so, can I use this picture? And they will, I've never had somebody say no. Because it's flattering to them to be asked. So, but I would definitely ask them. I mean, if you are doing something where you're like actively trying to create, you're trying to actively collect content, I think that's a little different, because because at that point they are volunteering that to you. But if you're just